any meaningful agricultural intervention without carrying the state along. And then, of course, when we talk about confidence, in terms of the financial institution, it is not just money coming from the government alone that is needed to fund agriculture. If it is properly done, the financial institutions can be interested because when they look at the numbers and they see what is going to come out, from there, they can fund small scale, they can fund medium scale, and then of course large scale farming. And we've got to a point in this country when we have to actually concentrate a lot more than ever before on large scale commercial agriculture, because that is where you really can have, and when it comes to productivity, you can deploy technology on a very large scale. And then, of course, you'll be able to get a lot more output. But that is not to say we're going to leave the small-scale farmers behind. They're very important. They're very critical to most of what we consume, especially the consumables like all the agricultural products that we use, on daily basis, like the perishables. We wanted to mention like all these tomatoes, pepper, and all of that. They are mostly coming from the small-scale farmers. And then, of course, it could be commercialized depending on the kind of incentive that is coming to them. And then I also need to emphasize this. When we talk about intervention, the rural communities where many of these things are produced are far removed from the market. It's not necessarily in terms of distance, but in terms of road and rural infrastructure that can easily make the products to get to the market. Because ultimately, when these things are produced, a lot of them go into waste because of inability to reach the market. And then, of course, I've said it before, we should be thinking more about market information service. There's a big gap between producers and consumers. And you get to the market, what you found a week ago in terms of pricing is not what you find today. And so, this is where government actually needs to come in. So throwing money at the problem is not actually the major intervention that we need. It's actually, it's something that affects all of us here. We eat on a daily basis, except you choose to fast. And for how many days are you going to fast? So it's important then for us to look at this, holistically. And we should, we should get down to the details about how this, sector will have to be properly are structured. But I will also want to say this, that first and foremost, the age of the farmers in Nigeria, particularly even the small-scale farmers we're talking about, is advancing now. If you take an average of Nigerian farmers now, you're going to find them in the order of about 60s because, not too many young folks really want to get into agriculture, and it should be concerning to us. And these are some of the issues that we should be looking at. And why are they not interested? It is because they don't see the incentive. There's a lot of risk involved. What are the mitigants? Are they really there to be able to help them? Are we talking about insurance, for instance? Is there any functional insurance support for agriculture? I think these are some of the issues we should be looking at. If you invest in agriculture and then maybe, like he mentioned, climate change, for instance,
yes.
Any weather event comes up and then, destroys all what you have planted. How do you get back on track? So these are the kinds of things we should be looking at. And then, of course, we should be talking about processing. And, of course, there are a lot of opportunities for agricultural processing in this country. But then the issue is, how do you aggregate even the raw materials that you are going to use? If they are produced in small quantities, on small scales, scattered here and there, how do you bring them together? That's where actually the idea of having, commercial scale agriculture becomes very relevant. And so it is the policy aspect that I think the federal government should be looking at. They should go down to details. The federal government and the states, they have ministries of agriculture populated by officials that are supposed to have agricultural background, different areas of agriculture, agricultural engineering, agricultural economics, agronomy, soil science, and what have you. These are the people whose skills should be brought together. And then, of course, you look at how do you harness, their knowledge and apply to the present situation. But if we are looking at esoteric issues, just you want to look at a global picture without considering the local component of it. We will continue to get things wrong. And then, like I said earlier, we'll be throwing money at a problem we don't really fully comprehend. And that gives a lot of room for misdirection of funds and for frauds and leakages and all of that, like it has happened. Like I said, if we really want to talk about anchor borrowers, I have a lot that I can say. Because when it was still operational, I was in this studio when I kicked strongly against this anchor borrower scheme. And I said, look, this is not really the kind of program that we need to be implementing.
Now, still staying with you, Dr. Oyeleye, you mentioned so many things, and one of it was the role of state governments. In fact, so many conversations we've been having since yesterday have been talking about the role of state government and how it is that they are not particularly paying attention to what it is they are meant to do with regards to so many issues that we are facing as a country, especially at this critical time. I'll need you to perhaps expatiate on that. We recall sometime that Lagos State had lake rise with Kebbi State. We saw that collaboration at some point, and some persons benefited. We saw it was somewhat beneficial between both states, that arrangement, so to speak. People could access the rice at some point, but after a while, that went into the thin air. And I'm wondering what it is exactly, what's making states not look in the direction of trying to harness some of the potentials their state have that could be beneficial on the long run for the nation as a whole.
Okay, I'll have to talk then in the realms of politics. Politicians generally like projects that they can take journalists to, showcase them, and then we build this, we build that, and all of that, and then of course, get a lot of plaudits. It's not so with agriculture. Agriculture takes place right there in the bush, in the farm, and it doesn't look so attractive to politicians.